Okay, welcome back to McCarthy Performance. We have a set of 360 Magnum aftermarket heads. And if you're familiar with the Magnum cylinders heads, they crack. They all crack. Um, so these are aftermarket. And we've done pretty much the minimum. These are not going into a high performance build. So I've gone in and I've touched up the valve job. I've gone in and honed out the guides lightly with Sonnen guide hone. And we lightly just lapped the valves to see where the original valve job laid. As I just touched up the valve job, I didn't move it that much. These I recommend that you definitely do that. And then I, excuse me, I deburred around the valve seats on the exhaust side and where they machined the step off and right in here. This is very sharp, like a razor. So that is the least you should do to them. Certainly you could port them and do a lot of stuff to them, but for this application, there's going to be no significant gain in doing any of that. So where we are on these is brand new valves and brand new valve springs, of course, brand new heads. So I'm going to get going and start assembling these heads. Okay, what I do is I clean out the guides. Um, what I use is a gun cleaner, and I think I've showed this before. Grab a couple. Pull it through. Because I honed the guides out, I want to make sure that I get all the residue out of the guide hole. And these wads, I buy them by the bag, and they are linty. You know, they do make lint, but a little bit of oil helps. And I would rather deal with a little bit of lint, and you can see. So we got some dirt off of it, so we'll put another one on. Usually I use two. Them are 5/16 or just a shade under 5/16. Of course, you probably aren't going to be able to put much more than two on here, but that usually goes through the loop, the eyelet on it, so it's not really a big deal. I'd rather deal with a little bit of lint than have grit left over from the valve honing job. And of course, you always want to make sure that when you lap the valves that they're clean and there's no lapping compound left on the valve at all, zero. And usually wash them with lacquer thinner after they come out of the jet wash and wipe the seats down with lacquer thinner until the rag comes back clean. And I'll wipe them down finally with oil in a paper towel to make sure there's no residual lapping grit left over on them. You just really don't want none of that on your valve seat or your valve face. Okay, now that's done. We'll move to the next step. Okay, so the guides are clean and the valves are clean. We're going to install the valve into the heads. I'm going to visually look down the guide holes, make sure there ain't no lint laying in there. I'll take out a brush like this and just make sure there ain't no fuzz in there. Or paint off the tool itself. Okay. We're going to wipe the seats down with a little bit of oil. Make sure there's no residue left on them. It's like I said, they've been run through the jet wash and washed with lacquer. So I suspect we ain't going to get much off of them other than just iron. You know, if you rub iron hard enough, you can usually bring up a little color on a rag. So we're gonna do that. I don't expect to see anything heavy. These heads have been painted, and for some reason they paint them inside and out. I don't know if it's powder coated. I don't believe it is, but it could be powder coated. But when they come out of my washer, they're sticky. So we might get some black coming up because they do the combustion chambers. Obviously that isn't too big of a deal. It's going to burn off. So not really any kind of dirt, paint residue, a little bit of maybe some picking up a little oxidization off of the steel from the oil, rubbing on it with a clean paper towel. That's kind of common. You know what the lapping compound looks like. You can obviously see it if you missed the spot. But when they come out of the jet washer and you wash them with lacquer thinner and you wipe them down with a paper towel, this is just kind of a put some oil on the seats and get them lubricated just in case they set around for a while. They don't start to rust. So, you know, it's not picking up anything, any major significance. So we'll do this one. This applies to any head. You know, just because it's a Mopar head, it doesn't necessarily mean that this doesn't apply to anything with a valve in it, because it most certainly does. Okay, so our valves are ready. Now I've marked my valves. I've etched a little marking in them so I know which one's which. I like to work the valve back and forth in the guide, make sure it's getting plenty of oil, and then I take it out and lube it again and work it in there. I know some guys wear rubber gloves, but I don't. Okay, so we've gone in and put the valves in the heads, and now what we're doing is we're checking the stem height of each valve from the spring cup or seat to the stem height, and I'll show you the tool that I've used to do that. And what we found out is a couple of them are a little bit tall. Usually I verify everything with a straight edge too, because assuming that the spring cups are all exactly the same on a head can sometimes get you in trouble. So what we're going to do is we're going to split it. So this one I think came in around 5 thousandths taller than the rest, because these are new valves and I did regrind the valves, and I do that now on every valve. And I touched up the seats. Well, that's where the change could be, the difference. So we're just going to split it. So that should give me like 2 thousandths, and that's plenty close enough for a hydraulic lifter. I'm going to call that 0. And I'm going to take 2 thousandths off of this. Okay, and we took 2 thousandths off the top of the valve. You don't have to do this. I mean, you probably really don't have to start getting concerned about how much stick out is on the top of the stem versus the other valves until you get into probably around 10 thousandths, where I would go in and straighten it out. But it only takes a second. Hydraulic lifters are fairly forgiving. As long as you're in the middle of the valving, you shouldn't have a problem with it. But like I said, the valve grinder's here, and it's not a big deal. So we're going to stick this valve back in the head, and we're going to check it. And like I said, I run a straight edge across everything, but I verify it with a plunge gauge too. So I'm doing 2 checks on it to kind of verify where the head is actually. If it's, if there's any difference in the cup height, we pretty much, once we put the straight edge on it, it'll tell quite a bit. And the plunge gauge is there for a reference, quick reference. But that's usually how I do these. This is a non-adjustable valve train, and there's fair amount of forgiveness on this. But like I said, seeing how we're rebuilding the whole engine and it's coming from my shop, I like to get everything as close as I can get it without reinventing the wheel. So I put the valve back in the head, and the rest of them are pretty darn good. They're really close. Verifying it with the straight edge and the plunge gauge. So yep. So I've got a couple of them that are roughly around 2 thousandths difference, and I would chalk that up in probably the spring cup variants. It's plenty close enough. So we're going to assemble this head. I'll get started on that here in a second. Okay, I just want to bring this up right here. With these style seals, They have a Viton lip on them. And a lot of times, depending on what valve, you can put the little booty on them. You can get them. Um, Being these are radius grooves. So if you look at this, it's got a sharp groove on it. You got to be careful with that because it can cut that. But these have a radius groove, and most of the high performance valves and a lot of the OEM stuff, LS's, Vortec, or Magnums, excuse me, have a radius groove on them. And them don't really affect these when you put them on. They usually slide right over, and I always lube the heck out of them anyways. But if you want, you can put that on there, and that'll allow you to slip it past without getting into the rut and the valve area that the keeper locks into that can cause the seal to get destroyed. That's I wanted to say that just in case somebody's watching. Um, you got to be really careful with the Chevrolet square locks that you don't hurt the seal when you slide it across. And the little booty helps that if you can get them. Usually they come with the seals. Okay, so we got this head together. I'm going to bore you with the next head, but you kind of get the idea. Um, I'll be finishing up these today, and then tomorrow, before the end of this week, we'll be getting on the 283 to weld the caps and cut them to get snap fit in the registers, and we'll be doing that job shortly, and line boring, of course, after fitting the caps. Thank you for watching.